Jake gazed at Emma with the same intensity he had noticed men staring at women on television. "Emma, please," he whispered gently. "Let's do that thing again. The one the guy and girl did in the show. I like it, it's so nice." Tears filled Emma's eyes as she shook her head. "No, brother Jake, I won't do that again. It hurts so much. I never want to do it in my life again." Are you curious how these siblings ended up in such a situation? Why is Jake asking Emma to do something so unbearable? How did things escalate to this point? And where are their parents in all of this? Stay with me as we uncover the heart-wrenching story of Emma and Jake. 10-year-old Jake and his 8-year-old sister Emma were frequently left alone at home. Their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, were dedicated professionals. Although Jake and Emma were accustomed to being by themselves, it was far from enjoyable. They attempted to entertain themselves with puzzles or coloring, but the television always seemed to draw them in. One particular evening, Jake was watching a late-night program featuring bright lights, loud music, and adults laughing and conversing in a way that seemed strange to him. The scenes moved swiftly, filled with excitement and mystery. Curiously, he called out to Emma, who was in the other room. "Emma, come here, look at this." Jake's voice echoed down the hallway. Intrigued, Emma hurried into the living room and sat beside her brother. The two watched the screen with wide eyes, captivated by the flashing colors and fast-paced music. They didn't grasp much of what was being said, but it seemed enjoyable, so they continued watching. "Why are we doing this?" Emma asked innocently, her forehead wrinkled in confusion. She didn't understand the content, but felt it was different from the shows they usually viewed. "I don't know," Jake replied. "Maybe it's something fun that adults do." The scenes progressed, leaving their young minds puzzled yet intrigued. They were unaware that the images they were watching were not intended for their eyes. Unknowingly, they were stepping into a world far more complicated than they could comprehend. Days passed after Jake and Emma watched that unusual TV program, but the images stayed vivid in their memories. The curiosity that had been planted within them grew into something they couldn't ignore. One afternoon, while their parents were at work, Jake looked at Emma, his face shining with excitement. "Emma, do you remember that thing we saw on TV?" he asked quietly, a mischievous spark in his eyes. Emma's face tensed as the unsettling images resurfaced in her mind. "I don't know, brother Jake. It didn't feel right," she replied hesitantly. But Jake had already made up his mind. "Let's try it," he said with a playful smile, unaware of the gravity of his words. To him, it seemed like just another harmless adventure. Emma frowned, feeling uneasy. "No, brother Jake. Mom," she said softly, "we shouldn't imitate things we see on TV." But Jake, oblivious to the implications, persisted. "Come on, Emma. It's just pretend. No one will know." Emma hesitated, unsure of what to do. Jake added, "Remember when you went outside that day? Even though Mom and Dad told us not to? No one found out, but if you don't do this with me, I'll tell Dad." Emma panicked, not knowing what to do. Neither of them fully understood what they were about to do, but Jake's words made her feel trapped. Finally, she agreed. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, brother Jake, let's do it." In that moment, the curiosity that had always driven Jake and Emma to explore together took a dark turn. Unlike the sweet adventures they usually shared, this time something was different. As they entered the room and lay on the bed, Emma felt a sharp pain. She screamed, running into the living room. "Ah, this is weird, brother Jake. I never want to do this again in my life," she cried, clutching her chest as tears streamed down her face. The pain was unbearable, far worse than she had imagined. Jake, on the other hand, didn't understand why Emma was so upset and still wanted to continue, unaware of how terribly wrong the situation had become. But Emma's heart raced with fear, and she deeply knew that this wasn't right. This wasn't like the harmless adventures they used to share. This time, there was no laughter, no joy, only pain and deep regret. Emma's discomfort grew with each passing day. She could see the changes in Jake's behavior, and it scared her. He had become more stubborn, more insistent, and Emma could feel that he was no longer the playful brother she once knew. The innocence that had once defined their bond seemed to have slipped away. One afternoon, when their mother came home briefly to pick up some documents, Emma felt an overwhelming need to speak up. She couldn't bear the silence any longer. "Mom, can I talk to you?" she asked hesitantly, her voice trembling as she approached her mother. Mrs. Thompson, distracted by phone calls and her growing to-do list, barely looked up. "Not now, Emma. I'm in a hurry," she replied, juggling calls and glancing at her watch. Emma stood there for a moment, her heart sinking. Her mother sighed, clearly stressed. "Later, darling. Be a good girl." "All right," she said, barely acknowledging her daughter's presence before stepping out the door again. Emma's tiny voice faded into the background, drowned by the noise of her mother's busy life. She retreated to her room, tears streaming down her cheeks, her heart aching, feeling invisible in a home that was supposed to be a safe place. All she wanted was for her mother to hear her, to understand the weight of her pain. One afternoon, after yet another attempt by Jake to ask Emma to imitate an inappropriate scene from the show they had watched, Emma couldn't take it anymore. She ran out of the house, her small body shaking with fear and confusion. She didn't know where to go. She found herself standing at the door of their kind neighbor, Aunt Sarah. "What happened, Emma?" Aunt Sarah asked, kneeling down to meet her at eye level. Emma couldn't hold it in any longer. She burst into uncontrollable tears, sobbing as she spilled everything. Jake's request, the growing fear inside her, and the discomfort she felt. Aunt Sarah wrapped Emma in a comforting hug. "You did the right thing by telling me," she said softly, her voice warm. "You don't have to carry this alone. I'm here for you, and we'll figure this out." Emma clung to Aunt Sarah, finally feeling a sense of relief. The weight that had been pressing on her chest seemed to lift slightly. "I'm scared," Emma whispered. "What should I do?" Aunt Sarah smiled gently and wiped her tears. "Don't worry, my dear. I'll help you. You're safe now." The parents were shocked, and at first they were in defensive mode. "Jake wouldn't do something like that," Mr. Thompson said, his voice firm with disbelief. Maybe they misunderstood what they saw. Mrs. Thompson tried to downplay the seriousness of the situation, but Aunt Sarah was firm. "Children see what they see, and they're given enough material to make sense of it," she said. "You've been so focused on work that you've forgotten to see what your children are watching. This is a warning," she added, her voice steady and filled with concern. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson were silent, realizing that their actions, although unintentional, had made their children vulnerable to dangers they hadn't even considered. Accepting this was not easy for them, but they knew they had to change. Mr. Thompson took immediate action to correct the wrong. He decided to monitor the children's screen time, ensuring that they only watched age-appropriate shows and engaged in suitable activities. They were also encouraged to talk about anything they had seen on TV, helping them understand their thoughts and feelings. In addition to these changes, Mr. Thompson arranged for both Jake and Emma to speak with a counselor. They knew their children needed guidance to understand their emotions as they recovered from their experiences. The family made a conscious effort to spend more quality time together in the evenings. Mrs. Thompson would read stories to Jake and Emma before bed, while Mr. Thompson kept them engaged in fun games. Gradually, the siblings started laughing again, rediscovering their bond through positive, healthy activities. It was a journey, but the Thompsons were committed to ensuring their children grew up in a safe and nurturing environment, free from the dangers of inappropriate content. Months passed, and the Thompsons became a more attentive and present family. Mrs. Thompson made a conscious decision to reduce her work hours, making her family a priority. Mr. Thompson, who had always been busy with work, started dedicating his weekends to spending time with Jake and Emma. Under this new attention and love, the children blossomed. Jake and Emma felt more confident knowing they could approach their parents about anything on their minds. The painful silence that had once filled their home was replaced by laughter, love, and the warmth of a family that was learning how to truly be there for one another. One evening, as they were all sitting together playing a board game, Emma turned to her parents with a thoughtful expression. "Thank you for listening to me now," she said softly. Her words, though simple, were filled with meaning. They brought tears to Mrs. Thompson's eyes, and in that moment, the family understood the true importance of their relationship. The greatest gift they could give each other was their attention, love, and presence in one another's lives. This was a new beginning for the Thompsons, based on stronger bonds and a deeper understanding of what truly matters. This is the end of our story. This story teaches us that the greatest gift we can give our children is our attention and love. Children should feel that their words are being heard and understood, especially when they're trying to share something important. Change begins by listening to their voices. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more interesting stories. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt that your voice was too harsh in childhood? Until next time, goodbye.